They called it the first battery, and they were wrong. 2,000 years ago, in the soil of ancient Iraq sat a small clay jar. Fill it with vinegar, drop in the right two metals, and the needle on a voltmeter moves. It produces electricity. A small current, but a real one, which raises an uncomfortable question. Did someone really build a battery 17 centuries before we think the battery was invented? For decades, that is exactly what we were told. Museums labeled it. Documentaries ran with it. The world's first battery hiding in plain sight in ancient Iraq. There is just one problem. It almost certainly was not a battery at all. And the story of how an ordinary clay pot got mistaken for ancient electricity is stranger than the myth. This is case 7, let's open it. Here is what we are actually dealing with. A clay jar, about 13 centimeters tall, small enough to sit in your palm. Inside it, a cylinder of rolled copper sheet, and suspended down the center of that cylinder, an iron rod held in place with black asphalt. On its own, that is just an odd bit of pottery, but look at the arrangement again. 2 different metals, a container that could hold a liquid, an insulating plug keeping them apart. If you have ever built a battery in a school science class with a lemon and 2 nails, you already know why that combination makes people nervous, because that is more or less the recipe for a battery. So the obvious question is the one everyone jumps to. Is it a battery? But before we answer that, there is a better question, and almost nobody asks it. Who decided it was a battery in the first place? Because the answer to that explains everything. The year is 1938, the place the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad. The man is Wilhelm Koenig, an Austrian working at the museum. The story goes that Koenig was going through the dusty collection when he came across these jars. And where most people would see a corroded pot, Koenig saw a circuit. In 1940, he published the idea that would follow this object for the rest of its life. These were galvanic cells, ancient batteries. And here is the inconvenient thing for anyone who wants to wave the idea away. He had a point. Because people tested it. Fill a replica with an acidic liquid, vinegar, wine, or grape juice, and it works. It generates somewhere between half a volt and a couple of volts. Link a few together and the number climbs. An engineer at General Electric built one in 1940 and got a current. Decades later, a television crew did the same on camera and powered a small load. So let's be honest about where we are. We have a 2,000-year-old object built like a battery. That behaves like a battery when you fill it. At this point, the myth is not a myth. It is a working device. So before I show you a single theory, lock it in. Right now in the comments, one word: battery or not. No editing it later when you have heard the rest. I want to see who called it. Because if this thing really was a battery, the question becomes what they were using it for. And that is where it stops being a science lesson and turns into an argument that has been running for 80 years. There are 4 serious answers to what this jar was for. I'm going to give each one a fair hearing, the evidence for it, and the hole in it, and then I want you to pick the one you would defend. Camp 1, the electroplaters. This is the famous one, the idea that ancient craftsmen used these cells to lay a thin film of gold or silver onto cheaper metal. It is real chemistry. Run a small current through the right solution and you genuinely can plate one metal onto another. Supporters point at certain ancient gilded objects that look almost too even, too clean to have been done by hand. The hole in it. In 2,000 years, we have never found the wires, the workshops, or a single object that can only be explained this way. Strong theory, no fingerprints. Camp 2, the healers. This one is better than it sounds. We know ancient physicians used electricity for pain because they used live electric fish, catfish, and torpedo rays pressed against the body to numb it. That is documented. So a jar that delivers a steady, gentle tingle is not a wild leap. It could be pain relief, Electrotherapy 15 centuries early. The hole in it. It is a guess built on a plausible motive, and again, no medical kit, no instructions, nothing found alongside it. Camp 3. The priests. Imagine a worshipper told to touch a sacred idol and feeling a faint, impossible buzz run up their arm. The touch of a god on demand. This theory is elegant because it explains why we never found a factory. You would only need one jar and a bit of theater. The hole in it. It is pure storytelling. There is not one shred of physical proof. It survives entirely because it is a great image. Camp 4. The skeptics. And then the quiet camp, the one most actual archaeologists sit in. That it was never electrical at all. That the resemblance to a battery is a coincidence and the truth is far more boring. Hold that one. I am coming back to it because it is the one that wins and I want you to see why. So there it is, the electroplaters, the healers, the priests, and the skeptics. Before I deliver the verdict, tell me your camp in the comments. And here is the rule that makes it interesting. Do not just name it. Defend it. Tell the other three why they are wrong. I will be reading. And yes, there is a fifth camp, the one that says aliens or some lost super civilization. I am leaving that one pinned at the edge of the board where it belongs, because we are about to do the thing that camp never does. Look at the evidence. Here is the problem that brings the whole battery story down. If you have an ancient civilization using electricity, plating gold, wiring temples, easing pain, you would expect to find the rest of it. The wires, the plated objects by the hundred, the tools, some second piece of equipment, anything. We have found none of it. Not a single wire, not one object that can only be explained by ancient electroplating. No workshops, just the jars. And then there is the detail that quietly ends the argument. Jars almost exactly like these have been found at other ancient sites, and we know what those ones held. Not acid, not metal connectors. Scrolls, rolled sheets of papyrus or parchment, slipped inside a protective copper sleeve and sealed with asphalt to keep them safe. Which means the copper cylinder was not an electrode, it was a scroll case. The iron rod was likely what the scroll was wound around or what survived of it. And the acidic residue that everyone got so excited about, that is exactly what you would expect from organic material, papyrus and parchment slowly rotting inside a sealed jar for 2,000 years. So if it was a scroll jar, why does the whole world think it is a battery? Go back to 1938. Back to one man in one storeroom who looked at a corroded pot and made a guess. A clever guess. A guess that happened to work when you tested it, but never at any point a guess backed by evidence that anyone actually used it that way. So let's rule on it fairly, because this is the part the loud versions of this story skip. Could the jar produce electricity? Yes, genuinely. Fill it with the right liquid and it will move a needle. That part was never the lie. Was it built to be a battery? Almost certainly not. There is no wiring, no plated objects, no workshops, no second device, and a far simpler explanation sitting right next to it on the museum shelf. It held a scroll. That is why this myth refuses to die. It is not stupid. It is a real object that really does something, wrapped around an assumption that was never true. The jar is innocent, we did this. Case status, closed, verdict, not a battery, filed under a very good coincidence. But here is the honest part, and the reason I left the floor open. A verdict is not the same as proof. I think the skeptics are right. I also think the healers have the most interesting case of the four, because the electric fish medicine is real. And if I had to bet on a way this jar was ever deliberately used to make a current, that is the one I could almost believe. So tell me I am wrong. If you are in the electroplaters or the healers, make the case I did not. The best argument in the comments, the one that actually moves me, gets pinned to the top of this case. I mean it. And there is one last thing, the part that stays with me. If you wanted to settle this for good, to run every test, date every jar, examine the original residue, you would need the artifacts themselves. And here the story takes a turn nobody scripted. The jars are reported to have gone missing during the looting of the National Museum of Iraq in 2003. So the object that launched 1,000 documentaries about ancient electricity may now be gone, which means the myth might just outlive the evidence that could have killed it. A battery that was never a battery, still glowing in our imagination long after the proof went dark. The case stays open in only one place now: people's heads, and apparently, the comments. Thanks for watching. There are more objects in this archive that the internet has badly misread, and the next case is already waiting. Subscribe and I will see you back in the Vestigia archive. Until then, this one is filed.